So let's talk about the Genesis thing again. The TLDR for the people who don't know about the fuckery that went on there.
So, I don't have all the
Yeah.
statistics to the same degree I have with GBTC. I can talk about how it interacts though with Grayscale. So, there was a certain type of activity that was done at Genesis that was never disclosed to GBTC shareholders, and this is when our firm felt like we had been defrauded. Like when we found out this was going on, it was like, wow, if we had known this had been happening, we wouldn't have done this investment. But basically, Genesis was lending Bitcoin to a handful of select firms, allowing them to, on the condition really that they take that Bitcoin, they park it in the Grayscale Trust, which you had to put Bitcoin in to get shares in the trust. And then they were letting them take the shares that they got, which are supposed to be restricted, meaning that you can't move them, you can't trade them, you can't sell them for 6 months. And they were allowing them to take those shares, use them as collateral to borrow more money from Genesis and park it in the trust. And they basically enabled this cycling to happen. And so if you look at the assets that were in Grayscale at the end of 2019, there was like 300,000 Bitcoins that were in the trust. And it had been growing linearly every single year. Okay, 2019 is when they, in 2020 is when they signed these master loan agreements at Genesis with firms like some of the best names in the space, BlockFi, Three Arrows, Alameda, Celsius, Babel Finance. Basically, every firm that blew up is who they were doing this trade with. And the amount of assets that were inside of GBTC went from 300,000 Bitcoins to 650,000 Bitcoins in 1 year time. And then they stopped creating new shares when the shares started trading at negative. So, like, they used this financing tool to flood free Bitcoin into the hands of Ponzi schemes on the condition that those Ponzi schemes then parked the money back with them in a different vehicle where they knew the Bitcoin could never come back out. And the end result is not only did they flood the market with shares, which has caused this massive discount, but the creditors at Genesis, who are now fucked and have lost all their money, okay, well, where did their money end up? It ended up inside of Grayscale. So really, it's like like he defrauded the Genesis customer base. He used y'all's Bitcoin. He laundered it through a Ponzi scheme. He had the Ponzi scheme give it back to him in a different vehicle, and he still has the Bitcoin. Like it's still sitting in Grayscale's trust. So, and he's making fees off of it. So it's kind of a sick thing that happened there. And if you compare what happened with like FTX and Alameda, there's a lot of parallels. FTT is their GBTC, token. Alameda is their DCG. It's their slush fund where all the profits get spent on whatever they want to spend them on. And Genesis is their FTX. Is where the customers get lured in to deposit their funds that then get sucked right back out to go into the other parts of the empire. So, and these loans that were happening from Genesis to all of these illustrious characters, not like they were never disclosed to at Grayscale. And for the longest time, if you asked Michael Schonestein, hey, what about these loans? He'd go, that's Genesis. I have nothing to do with that. Okay, if
Well,
you
he
go to
tried.
the exactly, if you go to the bottom of those master loan agreements, his signature is on every single one of them. Grayscale has to approve the transfer of those restricted shares, etc., every single time. So we only know about one of them. We only know about the Three Arrows one, where the documents actually came out in the bankruptcy case. But there's more, and they're going to come out in time, and we're going to see who else they were doing this trade with. I also thought it was like interesting from your interview. Michael said that they know every one of the customers that comes in. He's like, oh, we do chain analysis, we do KYC, and you were asking about that, and he kind of like gave up the game a little bit, where he said, oh,
Mm.
well, it was Bitcoin coming from Genesis, And so, when we do a chain analysis on it, like it was like it's Genesis's Bitcoin, and it's like, well, how can you say that you know the source of the customer funds when you took funds from the biggest Ponzi schemes in the industry? And however you were able to take those funds in, whether you washed them through Genesis or whatever, you weren't able to detect that this money, that these firms were Ponzi schemes. Like the whole point of the KYC process, the whole point of the chain analysis process is to detect criminal activity. And you created a structure so that that criminal activity could just be washed and come right in. And now the victims are the shareholders, the million shareholders who are sitting on a fucking asset that's down 50% because of that behavior. So, anyway, now I'm wilding a little bit. So
Yeah, but I don't know how they thought they'd get away with it. I don't know how they thought the party would go on forever.
I, that is one of the big mysteries to me too. And one of the things that people have told me is like, well, Barry has a background in bankruptcy, and like Barry thought that he could structure this in a way that he's going to get away with it. And if that's the case, this guy is an absolute just like, hey, I'm going to run this scheme. I'm going to make sure I set up the right shell entities so that when I fuck you out of all your money, I'm going to leave you with nothing to go after, and all your profits are going to be in another vehicle you can't touch that I'm going to make my money on. Like if that's intentionally designed, that is dark.
Yeah.
And I will say, in terms of the intentionality, the trust documents at Grayscale got changed 5 times over the lifetime of the trust documents.
Mhm.
There used to be a clause in the trust documents going back like all the way up to 2017, I believe, or 2018, that said if 75% of the shareholders get together and are unhappy with the sponsor, they can hold a vote and they can change the sponsor. Now, 75% is a really high threshold. Like that's, most it's 50 plus one, but 75%, okay, that's what the rule is. They changed that, removed it, and said, actually, we're amending the trust documents in the sketchiest way possible, like this implied consent way where there was no vote or anything. We're changing the trust documents so that no percentage is enough. You can't remove us as the sponsor. And it's like, what was the thought process behind making that change where you thought 75% is not a high enough threshold to protect us from how pissed off people are going to be once they realize what's happened? Like, that's.
Yeah, and I wonder if I thought about Barry a lot. I've met him, and I met him a while back, and he seemed like a good guy, and I had no idea what was only this fuckery was going on. But I was sitting there thinking, like, was he the mastermind behind this, trying to figure out like some grand scheme, or is it people within the structure of what he's got have come up with these ideas, and people who are running the loan book at Genesis have thought, well, we could do this, and like I don't know how intrinsically involved he was in, because it could be that someone is a big mastermind that comes over, or it could be just a chain of stupid decisions of trying, like Genesis are trying to get as many loans as possible, GBTC, they're trying to grow the trust enough. But I always come back to the fact that, well, there has to be a link between the two because of those loan agreements. There has to be a link.
Well, so yeah, I mean, like, I can buy in that like perverse incentives lead people to make bad
Yeah,
decisions. Where the line is crossed is when you realize that you've made bad decisions and that there's a lot of victims and that there's something you can do to make good to the best of your ability on those victims, you choose not to do that.
yeah,
That's where now there is no like, oh, I didn't know what was going to happen. Now it's like you're hurting people and you don't care. Like it's like you care more about your own self-interest than you do about fucking a million people or 2 million people.
right.
And
Well,
the
that's exactly what I said to Sunshine in the interview. I said, you can do something about it. And he said, I'm working tirelessly for the shareholders. We're suing the SEC. I'm so brave. I'm suing the SEC. I'm the bravest guy to do that. And I was thinking, nah, you're full of shit. You can do something right now. Like all these people that you owe money to, and I'm not even worried about the people who've got 10 million in there. There's people in there who've got thousands. There's even Gemini customers have got thousands in there, but that's all they've got, or it's a really meaningful amount to them. And there's so many people who are being fucked to protect a few people who are super rich, and it
yeah,
pisses me off. It's everything we're trying. It's the opposite of everything we're trying to do.
100%. And GBTC, like, it was sold as a product built by the adults in the room, and it was sold into people's 401ks and IRAs. And we've gotten 4,000 investors have now reached out to us. We've gotten hundreds of messages of retirees that are wiped out, that are like, I believe in Bitcoin. I still believe in Bitcoin, but I bought this thing at a premium. I'm down 80%, and I'm going to have to go get a job again. And I'm 70 years old. Like, it's disgusting. It's disgusting. And the thing, like, the two places where Michael Shine is being completely dishonest with people. One is like, okay, he could make decisions today that would be good for shareholders, that would make Grayscale still be a $500 million company or $1 billion company. Like if he just reduced the fees, if he was transparent about what was happening at the business, and he was honest about a redemption plan, doesn't even have to start immediately, or like partial redemption plan, those things would preserve the business. He'd have a fantastic business. There's still 600,000 Bitcoins in this trust, but he can't do that because that's not good enough for DCG. So
Yeah.
he's making decisions at Grayscale based on what's good for DCG, not for what's good for their customers or the Grayscale business or their shareholders. So that's like one thing that he's being dishonest about. The second thing he's being dishonest about is his whole ploy about not being able to do redemptions right now. This whole like, hey, the SEC won't let us do the redemptions. We're not allowed to do the redemptions. That's a lie. It's a lie. And I have talked to 20 plus law firms on this topic. I think this is actually something that's going to be clarified soon by Gary Gensler. Um, but to seek the Reg M relief to do the redemption program that would get rid of the discount tomorrow, all they have to do is file notice with the SEC. The SEC would have to intervene to stop them. It's not like they need permission to do anything. They just tell the SEC, "Hey, we're doing this," and the SEC would have to be like, they'd have to give, I think, 5 business days, and then the SEC would have to intervene if they wanted to stop it. Reg M, the thing that they're claiming that the reason they can't do redemptions is only when you are creating and redeeming shares simultaneously. If you're only creating shares or you're only redeeming shares, and there's been 1 year of time between one of those things happening, there is no controversy about being able to offer a redemption program. So his whole thing about we are singularly focused on becoming an ETF, so focused we won't even think about any other idea that we could implement right away to help people. It's like, it's just bullshit. And he is like, wants to act like he's on a crusade against the SEC to do right by shareholders when he could, in 5 business days, solve the entire problem, but won't.
Well, I don't think he can. All I think he can do is blow the whistle on what he did or was part of. I don't think he can do it. He'll be
So
fired.
okay, then Barry. Like, like, I
Yeah.
don't know, the buck stops with someone. So I'm going to say the buck stops with Michael because he's the CEO. But if he got fired trying to do the right thing, at least that would preserve his reputation. But like, okay, then the buck stops with Barry.
Mm.
But like, they could do that tomorrow, and they're playing this total shell game, lying to everyone's face. And it's just, it pisses me off so bad to see, because the victims are real. And if you read the complaint that FTX filed last night against the clawback, the $4 billion clawback, have you seen that?
No, I saw you tweet about it that like let the games begin.
Oh yeah, no, dude, everything's going to the next level right now. But um, this $4 billion clawback that they filed for, like, if you read the documentation, they say in their complaint that that uh, Genesis was the main feeder fund of the FTX and Alameda Ponzi scheme. And that at one point in time, Barry had lent Alameda $8 billion
Oh fuck.
of money from the depositors at Genesis. So they were just playing a net interest margin game where they were paying out the depositors at Genesis 3%, and everybody thought, "Wow, I'm trusting the best that there is." And then he was turning around and lending it out to a literal criminal Ponzi scheme at 8% interest and pocketing the difference, $8 billion. And the like, he enabled these crimes. He, like, without that money, Alameda and FTX would have never gotten to the size they got to. You know, same with Three Arrows, same with Voyager, same with go down the list. And so, not only did he victimize all these people at Genesis, but he victimized all the people at all of the other firms as well when he funded the criminal enterprises that fucked them over too. So like I kind of look at like that GBTC, it's like the ring of power and it corrupts all. And like Barry has become Sauron, corrupted by this vehicle, and that ring of power is the source of all the money, the liquidity that allowed these Ponzi schemes to expand so massively. And that's why he's the last domino to fall, because he's the source of it all. Like it's all the dominoes have tumbled backwards now to where it began.
You could these people end up in jail for this kind of thing? Because you talk a lot of things you've said, like they remind me of everything I've seen when I've read about the Madoff case or watched a film about Madoff. Where you see all the retirees who were fucked by it. Um, yeah, Madoff got what is it, 150 years.
Yeah, I mean, if Sam's going to go to jail, then I don't know why this behavior is the same. Maybe it's papered a little bit better. I know that there's criminal investigations that are ongoing right now at the Department of Justice in the state of New York, and we will see what the outcome of those at the SEC. We'll see what the outcome of those investigations are. I'm a redneck from Tennessee, and we have a saying like, where there's smoke, there's fire, and like there's so much fucking smoke at DCG you can't breathe. So my guess is that as you actually dig deeper, and you get the documentation, the intercompany communication, etc., you're going to get the receipts for the crimes. But we'll see.
Yeah, and I don't know how much you can talk to this, but I'm guessing this has been a fucker for you to go through because there's clearly like some, I don't know if it's personal investment or treasury management, but there's you're clearly exposed.
Dude, well, so we lost like let's call it $3 million or something on this trade, which like that sucks. But like in the scheme of things, like for our fund that we have, that's like at the time that we lost those funds, marked it to that. Let's call that like 8% or 7% of the
Right.
fund. So it's like it's painful, but it's not like okay, like you know, it could have been worse. Where we got wrapped up in this is we threw up a website, redeemgbtc.com. Well, first I started bitching on Twitter about it. Then I threw up a website, redeemgbtc.com, because so many people were hitting me up in my DMs. I couldn't, it was like flooding. And shameless shill, if you're a shareholder of any of these trust products, go to redeemgbtc.com, fill out the form, let us know who you are. We'll keep you up to date about what's going on. We may need your help on certain initiatives down the road. So please do that. It takes 2 minutes, please. But we stood up this website, and then the floodgates started coming in of thousands of people. And it's like once you start reading the messages, this takes on like a whole nother.
It's brutal.
It's brutal. It's like, wow, I've been advocating for 12 years for Bitcoin. Like this is my career, this is my reputation, and we're allowing scams like this to happen on such a scale that for the first time in my entire career in Bitcoin, I felt ashamed to be involved in this. Like the first time ever. And so, I felt like damn, we have to wash this out. Like, I'm not some big state person. I don't like the SEC. I don't like the government. I think they're as corrupt as anybody. But like, okay, well then if that means the responsibility is going to lie on us, we have to wash this out. And so as I've learned more and more, I've been sucked into this. So this is not what I want to be doing. No one's paying me to do this. If we're successful, my shares will go up in value, but it's not enough to justify the amount of time that we're spending on this. It's just like, our reputation and our legacy as an industry is being marred by this behavior, and people have knew this was going on. People have known this is going on, and they haven't said anything about it because of the money, because there's too much money to be made, and if you open your mouth you might lose some of it. And like we see where that is a road to, like it's a road to some massive calamity that sets the industry back 4 years.